Hey guys, Rich from Rich Gaming. Hope everyone is doing fantastically well. And joined again by less regular guest now, but Quinn. Quinn, how you doing?
I'm all right. I mean, the reason I'm less regular is all your fault, so you can't really
I
put the
know
blame on me.
it is my fault. Who'd have thought, right? Working,
You're
having to work for
depriving
a
my
living.
fans of my glorious voice. Like what the hell's wrong with you? Why are you so
99% of
cool?
the comments have been, "Where is Quinn?" I was expecting a picket outside my house, with the people with the boards, bring Quinn back, sort of thing. So yeah, Quinn, I'm a lot more excited about doing this one than I was 2 weeks ago. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, for one, we have fun new things to talk about, and two, it's like a faction that's actually like cool.
And they're enjoyable, right? I think everyone I speak to, everyone who leaves comments, has always said like they love Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think probably that affinity for a lot of people comes from the movies. Like the
Yeah,
movies are so well received, but everyone loves them. But everyone realizes they were just a little bit shit, and I think
yeah, they're a
now,
bit wet, aren't they?
and now they're not.
Mm.
I think as I said in my other video, Guardians are back on the menu, boys, and I think most definitely. I don't think they are S tier by any stretch of the
No,
imagination,
but
but
like you can give them a good run now. I think in
yeah,
the hands of like a good player, they'll do a lot of work.
absolutely, and I think far less forgiving than they were previously as well, right? Because I think to win anything with Guardians, you needed both to be a very good player, make no mistakes, and have a bit of luck on your side when it came to dice rolls, both for you and against your opponent. Whereas now,
You
I
mean
think
more forgiving, right?
more forgiving, yeah. So yeah, I think they're a much more rounded affiliation now.
Yeah.
So, Quinn, as we always do with these, then should we start by taking a look at the current sole leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and that is Peter Quill, or you may know him as Star Lord.
Who?
Exactly. Oh, that was one take as well, guys.
Yeah, boy.
We didn't even need to prompt each other. So, guys, let's start with Star Lord then. For those that haven't seen, he's had two big changes to his card. First of all, winging it, which is not just a change for him, but a change for the entire faction.
Yeah,
It works in almost the same way, with the big exception of you don't need to spend a tactics card, and you can dish them out to any number of players or up to three players, three allied characters at the beginning of the power phase. And actually, there is a third one as well, Quinn, isn't there? They've changed when you spend them, so it's in the modified dice step
yeah.
rather than
Um,
after you've rolled your
Also,
dice.
you you can't stack them anymore either. You have to
Yes.
give them out to three separate individuals,
Yeah.
and the up to like bit is there. So like, if you've only got two models on the board, it doesn't suddenly turn off your leadership.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. So overall, I think ripple effects for this are quite big. There's a lot of characters, as we'll see in the Guardians, that that dice modification is really nice, both on the offensive and always on the defensive as well. So I think that's going to be a big talking point around how we play and the characters we can bring. And then lastly, he's got hit and run, which costs 2 power and is just a hit and run. I quite like it. It means that he can move up, he can pick up an objective, he can make an attack, whether it's an element or a full auto, and then move away. Because really, that's where he's playing, isn't it? He's a backline
Yeah,
damage dealing support character, really. Now, I would say with winging it, he sort
I
of
mean,
falls into that support.
it's really nice just him having a way to spend power that isn't shooting a gun.
Yes, yeah, because that was one
I
of
mean,
his
it's
problems.
still kind of shooting a gun, but it's a different purpose.
He gets to shoot and move now. He's got
Yeah.
all of the things. Quinn, one thing I want to touch on straight away, when I did my video around the changes, I was quite adamant, and I think I still am adamant, that he is now a good, I'm going to say very good three-threat leader. Is there a
Yeah.
world where you see him taking the power gem?
Oh God, no. I mean, there's not really a world where I see anyone taking the power gem unless it gets changed in some manner. Just because an entire threat to generate 2 extra power, like, it can enable some plays on some characters, but the ones that actually have access to the power gem aren't really those characters. Like, a threat is a big cost for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Star-Lord did have something a little bit more, a little bit more akin to a drop-off, say, for example, or something like that, then maybe. But, the only thing that you can do with it is a turn 1 hit and run, and that doesn't feel like it's very good. Especially at 3s across the board for his defenses, it just doesn't seem good enough. So I'm in agreement. I can't see him being attached to the power gem, especially now, because if you take the power gem with him, that's all you can do, isn't it? He becomes a constant 4-threat character. So no, I think having him as a 3-threat is most definitely more advantageous. Cool. So let's then, Quinn, look at the roundup for the rest of the affiliated characters. So alongside Star-Lord, we've also got Angela, Drax, Gamora, Groot, Nebula, Rocket, and Ronan. And I think of those, 3 of them have had updated cards so far. So Gamora, Groot, and Rocket.
We've not gotten into the actual roster building section of this video yet, but it'll be, they're probably going to end up in it. Spoilers.
I think they probably are, yes. And let's take her by herself, because she is the deadliest woman in the galaxy.
Oh boy, is she.
Gamora. I think with both the changes to her card and the reroll ability now every turn, being able to reroll 1 dice of any dice, right, of any sort, once per turn potentially, she becomes significantly more viable.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always had like a soft spot for Gamora in this game because she does something I really like, which is fucking murder people.
She does murder people.
Yeah,
She
like
does
having a
murder
6
people.
dice builder on, a 4 threat is real nice, especially in conjunction with extra hits for wilds. She's like 4 threat Doc Ock, and I quite like Doc Ock.
Yeah, and well, and again, especially with with being able to fish, right, on that cosmic assassin, being able to fish for that pierce is very, very strong. Also, let's not underestimate assassin leap. Being able to do a guaranteed 3 damage into your opponent. Yes, they get to roll a dodge roll, but being able to get that damage off for 2 cost. If somebody gave you an attack that was guaranteed 3 hits for 2 power, you would absolutely take it.
Yeah.
So, for me, that's a great use of power there as well. She's also gained stealth now as well, which, sorts out a couple of her issues. It kind of puts her into that Black Widow category, doesn't it? Where players really have to think carefully about how close to her they get, kind of inside the 3 but outside of that 2 range, to really be able to do any damage to her. So
I mean, like all of the changes that she's experienced in this sort of do-over is like all to do with her survivability, because she was more glass than cannon previously. Now, people aren't going to be interacting with her as much on the approach, and then once she's in there, she's at least getting to do what she does best, which is slay dogs.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm super happy with her. And before we jump into the next 2, let's just have a little talk then around, because we like to do this as well, playing with the Guardians of the Galaxy, because I think they've got some interesting characters in their roster that allow for, I'm going to say turn 1 plays, but as we know, turn 1 plays, I don't think they're going away. People are still going to work out turn 1 plays. You're just going to have less control over what your turn 1 plays are going to be now. But, you've got people like Angela for, going up and grabbing that central objective. Even Star-Lord now with his hit and run is going to be able to bring some more objective grabbing there as well. But how are we winning with Guardians, Quinn? Because for me, I see them as, they're kind of what X-Force want to be. They are a killer list, right? They're going to win through attrition.
Yeah, they're sort of, they're an attrition list, but they're also typically a wide list, and that allows them to sort of not neglect objectives as much as other attrition lists might. So like they can sort of maintain parity for a while in terms of VPs, and then hopefully they start like beating out the opponent in terms of like just models left on the board after a few like stellar Gamora, Angela type activations.
Yeah. Well, and as we'll move on to Rocket and Groot as well. Rocket has been one of my favourite characters in this game for a long time, and I think he has just moved up the rankings of two threat characters. So one half of the deadly duo and the bodyguard side of it is Groot, and he's another character, isn't he? That on paper, having Rocket and Groot next to each other, you know, they got the bodyguard and everything else, seemed really good. But it didn't take long for people to just break that, and breaking it was basically picking up Groot, throwing Groot into Rocket, and Rocket dying. Is pretty much what used to happen almost every game, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's just sort of how that goes. When you throw 4 damage into a 3 health character that's rolling 2 dice on defense,
It's gonna...
usually the raccoon goes squid.
It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. So we went through all the changes of Groot beforehand, but just to quickly run through it for people, Strike is now range 3, which is really nice. I think it 2 things happen then. Somebody gets within range 3 of Rocket, and it means that you're more than likely Groot's going to be there as well, which is nice. And as we'll see on Rocket's card, there's some more synergy with that as well. So it means that Groot can be further up the board, but still in range of Rocket. And then living plant was reduced, wasn't it, to once per turn, which I think.
Yep. There was also a reduction in cost on I'm Groot by, I believe, about 1.
There is, yes, there is a power reduction in that as well. And let's not forget that Groot is one of only a handful of people who can throw any size character, including Dormammu. So not only can you throw Dormammu, he gains a stagger condition.
I mean, he doesn't because he's Dormammu, but yeah.
Oh, of course, he's immune to it, isn't he? Yes, but you know, if it's Thanos or somebody else like that, you're gonna, you're not going to be able to.
Stagger is almost always good unless it's like Dormammu, Wolverine, or Blade. Those are like the 3 people that don't give the slightest shit about
Three
Stagger.
people that do not care about it.
Yeah. I mean, actually, leading into that sort of preamble, I thought you were going to talk about Root because now that Groot, now that he's going to see a fair bit more play, I think that's a fair assumption to make. Being able to like attack people at range 3 means that he's going to have a lot more power on him throughout the course of the game, which means that he can dish out that root a lot more readily. And man, root's actually like one of the better conditions. It's just not seen very often.
It's so good. You know, people underestimate, I think, root because it's only an extra power, but the number of times I find myself where I've been rooted, and you know, let's say on a Magneto, for example, and it cripples them, right? It absolutely cripples them. And if you
root
can do it,
really makes my Doctor Strange sad.
But you know, if you can do a root in combination with a stun as well, all of a sudden, and that's one of the things, and one of the things we didn't touch upon when we talked about the attrition and the style of play from Guardians, but they dish out condition tokens like no other affiliation, really, don't they?
I mean, you've got sort of 4 core members of the team that can dish out conditions, some of which are very close to being unique to those characters. Like Star-Lord gives out a ton of them. Drax does bleeds every now and then. Like Groot does root, and then on top of all of that, you've got Ronan doing judgment, which is I love Ronan so much.
And in a killy list, when you're dishing out judgment, it's so good. It's really, really good. But Root on here as well is super good. So I think, you know, Groot for me goes into the core of that list. I can very, very rarely see myself not taking Groot. So we spoke about one half of the deadly duo. Let's talk about the other half. And boy, I didn't think Rocket was going to get anything. I genuinely didn't think he was going to get anything.
He was fine, and then they gave him all this shit, and it's like, holy fuck, he's one of the best 2 threats in the game.
Yeah. So top part of his card remains exactly the same. His stats are the same. All his attacks are the same, booby traps, no change there. But the first big change, and it is big, it might only seem like it's going from range 1 to range 2, but as we mentioned, with the addition of the range 3 strike, it's even more important, is personal bodyguard. So now it means that Groot can be within range 2 of Rocket and still be his personal bodyguard, which is just
it's
huge.
a massive range extension. Not only for like where Rocket can stand and sort of can contribute to the fight, but also where Groot can stand as well and like leverage that range 3 strike.
Yes.
Suddenly you have both members of this duo actually being quite deadly.
It's scary. It's very, very scary. You know, as you know, I'm currently playing in a league at Leodis with the old Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm trying to win a league with Guardians of the Galaxy, but using all of the old cards. I mean, if I had these cards now, just make this affiliation feel so much better. Arguably, maybe not the best, but one of the best kill lists in the game, and you know, to no small extent because of Rocket. And what he brings. I actually think Rocket and Groot could be seen as a duo now outside of affiliation quite a bit.
I mean, like, you want to bring a 5 threat into your list. I mean, Rocket and Groot, they give you 2 bodies. Like,
well, and you know, you get a lot more flexibility now with cards, because I think if you're taking Rocket and Groot, and we'll go on to tactics cards, but there's definitely at least 1, potentially 2 tactics cards you want to bring there. So yeah. Second one, and this is a brand new superpower. We've never seen it in the game before. It's a brand new keyword, nimble.
Yeah.
Does not suffer damage from collisions. So what does that mean? It means you can pick him up and throw him. He will cause damage to the person that he's being thrown into, but he won't take damage. You can throw people into him. The person that you're throwing will take 1 damage, but he will not take any damage, nor from any terrain. So he does not have to roll any dodge dice. He just cannot suffer damage from collisions.
He's like Kingpin, but better.
I can feel Corbox Peter Parker crying that Rocket Raccoon is more nimble than him. But yeah, I mean, it's massive. It's an absolute game changer, and it makes the survivability of Rocket so much more than what it was previously, because people are going to have to get within, within at least, most attacks are a most people don't have a range 5 attacks. That means bringing them within range 4. You're going to have Groot in your way, and you're always going to take Groot having that hit over Rocket, because even though Groot is a threat more, Rocket is the one that is dealing out the damage. It's not Groot. It's so good. It makes him so much more of a viable character, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like, also, like, whenever you talk about Rocket, you have to talk about the fact that he's one of the only size 1 characters in the game, which means that he can just hide behind a car and shoot everyone else without being seen. It's so good.
Is he, we're saying one of the only? I think he is the only one at the moment. We get the Ant-Man. Yes, of course, we've got the Ant-Man and Wasp in their small form. Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's rephrase it. He's the only good size 1 character in the game.
Whoa. Ant-Man's all right in Sam Spam.
Shots thrown, shots fired at those two.
Hadron Enforcers fired.
So Quinn, that's all of the new characters that have had changes, but there's 4 other characters that have not had changes but are still potentially viable. So Angela, Nebula, Drax and Ronan. So let's start with Angela, because we've gone through her on lots of our other list. Everyone by now knows the turn 1 plays with her. She brings so much to the game. We include her, right? We don't need to go into detail about her card, but she fits so well into this list.
I mean, what's scarier than Angela normally? It's Angela that can reroll 2 dice on attack, defense, or dodge.
Yes, and when your falls across the board, that's really nice. When your opponent can't modify their dice, that's even nicer. And then if you're fishing for a crit wild in Heaven's Wrath for that cleave, then it becomes it becomes pretty good, doesn't it? So we're not going to jump.
Also, being like a size 4 terrain thrower is always valuable because you will often run into like a table that just is not great for you. There might be like a size 4 in the middle of the board that people are hiding behind so your dudes can't shoot. Just yeet it into someone's face. Just get rid of it. It's gone.
That is true. Open the way for Star-Lord and Rocket. So yeah, we won't go into too much detail on Angela, but one character I do want to talk about because she's a 2-threat that we spoke about briefly, I think, but not in too much detail, and that is Nebula. And I think she is an underrated 2-threat. I think people often, because she can't be an objective carrier, people often dismiss her as being no good. But actually, her strike with shock, shock sword assault with stun. She's got 2 builders in the game, which, as everyone knows, I always really, really like. She's a long move. She has kind of a reverse healing factor in cybernetic enhancements, and she's immune to loads of things. She's a really underlooked and undervalued character, isn't she?
Yeah, I mean, like, the one thing that always annoys me about Nebula, and I'm going to bring it up because fuck you, AMG, shock sword assault doesn't do shock.
It's up there with Ghost Rider not being immune to incinerate, isn't it?
The dude that's on fire being able to be more on fire. I mean, at least they're fixing that, but they haven't fixed this. No, it's not stun sword assault like it should be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if any of these get a little errata from the wording, but yeah, we digress somewhat. But
yeah, I mean, back to Nebula as a character.
But I really like her.
Having an assassin is really good. Like, I mean, as we already mentioned, Guardians are like a killer faction, and Nebula is there for that sole reason. Also, Nebula can do some very interesting things that, like, she's not specifically doing them, but by being on the table, she draws resources away from what your opponent should be doing, because Nebula does not score points, right? But your opponent still has to deal with her.
Yes.
Because if they don't, she's gonna murder them. And if they do, they're attacking someone that is contributing absolutely no VPs.
Yeah, and also let's not forget that she's got that. She can potentially reroll 3, actually more because she can reroll any number of attack dice when attacking a character that's holding an objective, or is it holding and contesting? Holding and contesting, and then she's got potentially rerolls on top of that from winging it. Shock sword assault and strike and even blaster pistol. All of a sudden, you're going to be hard pushed to not eke out some damage from each of them. So yeah, I think she's really good. And a long move is never a bad thing either as well. So
really good at hunting people down.
I want to move on to a disappointment for me, and we covered him in our 20 characters that need an errata. And if what we're led to believe is true, and any Guardians characters that are going to have an errata have had one, Drax. He needs movement. Is the long and short of it.
I actually reevaluated his kit not long ago just because people are down on him, but like I kind of like him. He does some really interesting things. I don't think you'd ever take him out of affiliation, but as like an in-affiliation piece, he's really damn tanky. Like, he's 3/3/2, which isn't great, but 6 stamina on both sides, I believe.
Yes, 6 on both.
Yeah,
and 3 is good.
And with the damage reduction is really nice. Like, he's a real solid piece. But also, like, he's bringing a throw. Like, throws are always good. Like, throws are chef's kiss. Like, being able to throw size 3 characters, even if it's for 3 power, like, is brilliant. Like, because that can help you with your attrition because you're doing damage by throwing things. But can also help you win on scenario by displacing enemy models, which is actually something Drax does relatively well. Like, he's got the superpower throw. His spender does a throw on a wild, and his other spender does a throw does a push full stop size 3. Like, he can do some really nasty things. Like, his basic attack is it's the same as most others, but with a wild bleed, and if they're already bleeding, which, Star-Lord, I think, can help with. Star-Lord can put out, conditions like that. You might, like, bring other characters like Hawkeye or Blade or whatever. Like, it's not something you necessarily plan for, but it's a nice little boost to his damage, and, I think we're going to see a lot less Shuri and things like that in the meta going forward, just because of the nerfs she received. Like, I don't think Drax is really in a bad place anymore.
Yeah, I think as a three threat character, he's okay. I would have liked to have seen a charge, something like that would have been good. But yeah, I mean maybe on a wide list, as you say, because I think we can see ourselves adding in probably the bulk of what we add into this out from outside is going to be three threat characters, right? To be able to take us wide, because there's some great options there now. And actually, there's a couple of three threat characters that can help Drax out as well, and help him get up the board a little bit. So maybe that's something we look at. Lastly, then rounding it off, I think it was Drax's counterpart in the box.
My boy, I love him. I love him so much.
I think you read his card, and he looks like one of the best four threat characters in the game. But for me, he's never popped off. But I think now with the wilds that he's got, so he's got a throw, a push, an explosive on his three different abilities. The fact that he can fish for them now, because a range 2 5 dice builder is okay on a 5 threat, but with a throw is very good.
Like a size 4 throw is
a size 4 throw even. Yeah, is very very good.
I mean, there is one like really really big benefit to playing Ronan that I would feel remiss of not mentioning is that you get to like push a model around the board and go, "You stand accused" every time you do it. It's fucking great. I highly recommend it.
Brilliant. And in terms of a killer list, he would be a character that people would have to go after, right? And actually 4 on his energy defense and 4 on his mystic defense is pretty good. But having the accuser as a reactive superpower is very nice, right? Because typically you always want to try and keep at least the power equal to at least enough power on him to be able to do a Kree justice for this, or at least enough health on him so that if he does get 4 damage on him, he's got enough power to then do a Kree justice, because it can ruin your opponent's day if he's dazed or KO'd. He moves forward short and then can do 1 attack. So at the very least, it's going to be a universal weapon if it's outside of range, but more than likely, with that short advance, he's going to be able to get in range for a Kree justice.
I mean, like, Ronan is probably the character in the game that has the lowest floor, right? So that, for those of you that don't know, this concept of like floors and ceilings. A floor is like the minimum a character can do. The ceiling is the maximum a character can do. And the reason Ronan has like one of the highest, if not the highest, floors in MCP is the fact that even if your opponent like dazes him before he does anything, which is the absolute worst thing that can happen to a model, like them getting taken out before they do anything, Ronan still gets to do a thing, which is just
crazy.
It's so good.
What are our thoughts on? And again, we're going to jump slightly into tactics cards here, but actually two things that we'll cover off. First of all, tactics card, field dressing with Ronan. Is it viable? Do we take him? Do we take it? Because usually field dressing is one of those things that you take on a big character and you have to use it in such a way that if it's a character that hasn't been activated yet, you want to use it so that they can have their activation. So you have to be really careful with the timing. But with Ronan, even if he's activated, he's got to do the accuser. And then if you field dressing him, either he gets to reactivate if he hasn't already activated, or he's alive to do things, or they take him out again and he gets to do the accuser again. Is it worthwhile taking field dressing for him, or
I think, like, field dressing is probably one of my favourite restricted cards in the game at the moment. And Ronan is an absolutely brilliant use for it. I think it comes down a lot to just sort of what map you're on. Like, is it spread out? Because if it's spread out, you're obviously going to have less characters able to do the field dressing, that kind of thing. But like, I mean, if you've got it, he's a prime target for it. I think that's, I don't even think that's in question, really. Like, he's really good with it.
Yeah. And then second part, Quinn, and I think I know the answer to this. I know my answer to it. He's a very good fourth threat, as you say, very, very low, very, very high floor. He's also a gem bearer. He can take the power gem. He's got a little bit more in terms of that he's got a superpower that costs one more. Sorry, he's got an attack that costs one more. But again, I don't see him taking that power gem and being a five threat.
Five threat is a lot. Especially one of the things that I always come back to when talking about gems is survivability for gem bearers, right? Because a gem increases your threat usually by 1, sometimes by 2, but those are rare corner cases. It tends to be that the best gem bearers are the ones that have some sort of defensive tech or can bear a gem that makes them better defensively.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, these characters are statted for the threat printed on their card, right? Ronan is statted as a 4 threat. When you give him the gem to make him a 5 threat, he doesn't suddenly become statted as a 5 threat. He just gets 2 more power around, which I don't think those things are necessarily equal. Like, yeah, a lot of gems, especially the power gem, are just sort of lacking in that defensive boost a character might need. Because it's an offensive boost, being able to create justice more often is a massive offensive boost, but there's no defensive help there. So, even though he does have that really high floor of being able to do something, even if he gets taken out, he can still get taken out very easily, just as he was a 4 threat at a threat above, which is obviously a greater loss for you as a player.
Yeah, because he's only 6'6" on his front and back.
Yeah,
which is I think slightly below the average for 4 threat. And then
I think it is the average for a 4 threat, but 3 defense on the most common attack type in the game really skews that.
Yes, yeah, it really does, especially when he doesn't have any damage mitigation and you say any defensive tech. So Quinn, that's all of the affiliated characters down, and actually we're looking like not too many roster slots left with the characters that we're going to be taking, but we do need to fill it up. So as we mentioned, the vast majority of characters that we're going to be looking at are from that 3 threat range, but we've got some 2 threats. We've also got 1 4 threat for consideration as well. But let's start with the 2 threats. You've picked one, I've picked one. It's Okoye and Toad. They're just very good, both of them. Very, very different. Bodyguard and then Extract, but they bring something that is, I suppose, not necessarily needed in Guardians, because the characters that are going to be up front and doing the damage in Gamora, Angela, and Drax, and Nebula even to some extent, all have an element of their own survivability. But she's always up for consideration, isn't she, when we're putting a roster together?
So, we're recording this before any potential Okoye changes have been revealed, because they're probably going to happen. At the very least, her flurry is going to have a crit requirement on it.
Yeah.
Other things might change on her because she is the best 2 threat by a country mile. Okoye is my girl. Like, she's just so good. Like, that General Dormammu reroll is so good for a 2 threat. Like, Nebula is the killiest 2 threat, probably. Rocket is probably second killiest. Okoye is like the 180 of that. She's like the most defensive 2 threat, but she can also be the most defensive for other people, which is really good.
And I think that's the thing. No matter what they do to her as a character, whether they nerf her offensive abilities, that sort of thing, as long as she keeps General of the Dora Milaje, Bodyguard, and Martial Artist, it doesn't really matter what they do to the rest of her, does it? As long as she can, as long as she got Vibranium Spear Blast and she can generate some power, it really doesn't matter. because she's not there for the offensive tech; she's there for the defensive tech. Toad, we spoke about Toad. You know, he brings some gameplay potential for certain extracts, doesn't he? In particular, Deadly Virus. He can get up the board and interact at a range 2. Finders Keepers is really good. He can dish out a little bit of damage. Spit Acid is quite nice with the guaranteed Incinerate. You know, he slots quite nicely again into most rosters as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, like, Toad is, once again, he's kind of a defensive 2-threat, but he's more objective-based rather than, you know, keeping your dudes alive. He's also, like, very, like, heavily statted on the front by comparison to a lot of 2-threats. Most 2-threats are 4-4. He's 5-3, which is definitely the better spread of the two options because it means he's on his healthy side for longer, which means he's contesting objectives just as well as every other character in the game, like, for longer, which is why you bring Toad. You bring him for objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. So then on to our 3 threats, and there's a theme here, isn't it, in a lot of the characters that we've looked at, especially in the 3 threat, that have mystic attacks. And, you know, I think that's because not a single one of the Guardians has a mystic attack. It's definitely something they are.
There's no magic in space, apparently.
Yeah, definitely something they are lacking in. Let's start with your first pick, Quinn, which is Baron Mordo. So 3 threat. He's obviously bringing, I think, 3 things to them. First of all, the mystic attacks that they don't have. He's got some of that support functionality as well. You know, being able to generate his own power and then being able to dish out additional damage dice or attack dice for characters is really good. But again, those tokens, those special condition tokens that this team are dishing out, he also brings Hex, but he also brings that grenade effect that he can.
Like, if he gets
as well.
a single, like, incinerate out on someone with his big attack, soul barbing that onto a bunch of people can lead to some very, very grisly demises for your opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's definitely one that's up for contention. And then the other Baron in the list is Mr. Zemo. I mean, he's good by himself. He hasn't had a nerf. We know this is what he's, you know, he's saying exactly as he is, which I know you're happy
I
about.
have very loudly proclaimed that Zemo is the best 3-threat in the game, and I'm not going to stop doing it because he is, and I love him. He's the best dancer in the MCU.
Would he beat Star-Lord in a dance-off? That is the question.
I think he would.
Okay, maybe we need to.
That's a discussion for comments. Like, you know,
guys,
yay or nay to Zemo beating Star-Lord in a dance-off. Let us know.
We know that Star-Lord beats Ronan, but Star-Lord versus Zemo. We'll put a little clip up here so you can visually see it. But yeah, who wins? So you see your little clip. Let us know down in the comment section below who wins, Zemo or Star-Lord. Quinn, I'm saying Star-Lord. I think you're going with Zemo.
I'm obviously saying Zemo because he's... I mean, I say this about a lot of characters, but Zemo's my boy.
So he brings a lot. He brings more rerolls. He brings some nice defensive tech of his own. He's got the charge. He's a great addition to the team because more rerolls is good, right?
More rerolls is more better. Yeah, more
rerolls is more better. And if you've got both Barons, you get to do more rerolls and more dicey dice. Which
but both of these are better.
More rerolls and more dicey dice are always good. Quinn, we spoke a lot about, or we spoke some about even, I should say, some of the characters that struggle a little bit getting up the board. You know, Drax is one of them. You know, Groot to some extent is another one, although maybe you don't want him too far up now. Ronan is another one that could be helped with, you know, with a move up the board. So we've got 2 characters here that can do that, both very, very different. Clear and Lockjaw.
Yeah, but both very different in the sense that one's good and one is Clear.
Oh, you bitch. I like Clear in that she's a mini mystic damage dealing version of Red Skull. So she can generate her own power. She can also move people. She's also got, and let's not forget, a terrain and an enemy character throw as well. But I think, she brings a lot. And the icy tendrils of Ichthalon, you've got to get a lot of triggers on there. With the rerolls, that makes it significantly easier. And even just dishing out a bleed, a slow, a stun, or, if you're very lucky, a stagger, I don't think it's a bad thing.
No, not by any means, but I mean, two physical defense is not great. I mean, obviously, Mordo has a similar issue, but he's generally sort of a bit further back.
He's a backliner, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, so it's clear to an extent, but, if someone gets up to in her face, I mean, if someone gets up in either of their faces, they're going to have a bad time, but I like the package that Mordo brings a lot more in terms of just stuff he does, especially in terms of his attacks.
What I would say about both of them is, they're both 3 threats. They are both sitting at the back. They might run up, pick an objective up, and run backwards. But with both of those characters, I feel like we've got 2 characters that already do that in both Star-Lord and Rocket, and they are 100% going in my squad, roster, and then indeed squad every turn. So I'm not sure that I could find a space now thinking about it for either of these 2 because of that fact that it's another character that sits back. But we'll see what happens when we put it together. And then, we love him. He's everyone's favourite bestest boy, Lockjaw.
Who's that good boy?
He's the good boy, Quinn. You know who's the good boy. He brings so much, doesn't he? He's not an offensive character, so he goes against...
I mean, you say that. I've had Lockjaw walk up to a full health Captain Marvel and just rip her face off.
But he brings some support, and I mean, that's really it. He brings so much support, but, interdimensional Bloodhound, let's not underestimate it. There's no range, and it costs 3 power. He's always guaranteed to have 3 power every turn as long as he activates near somebody. So
also,
I think
in a list like Guardians, where you tend to sort of swarm out a little bit more than the average list, you're getting more uses out of Interdimensional Bloodhound because you've got more people that can make attacks against that character.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And Teleport, as we mentioned, is really, really good for those characters that need moving up, or even a Star-Lord, even a turn 1, move Star-Lord up and allow him to get off, 2 attacks and then move away is not a bad thing.
Yeah, like popping a Gamora range 3 up, having a long move and God Slayer someone is nothing to sniff at.
Feels quite nice, yeah.
Yeah.
He's also inhuman, so he gets all of his own attack and defense rerolls, or can reroll one of them, and he's got a throw. Right, it's only terrain, but it's still pretty good, and he's dishing out conditions as well. So his bite does do bleed as well. So definitely up for consideration. And then the last one that I put in there, I included her in a lot of my lists as kind of as what she is, a damage dealing mystic attacker, and I think she's one of the best in the game for that. If you want a lower threat cost mystic attacker, I think she brings a lot to the game. And I really like her tactics card as well. The fact that she can use it on an enemy, pull them into range of another character, and they are automatically being incinerated, I think is really, really nice. She also dishes out some conditions as well in bleed. She's got Pierce on her Builder Soul Sword. It's almost as good as Blades, and she's a threat 3 character. I really like her. I don't know your thoughts.
Yeah, Magik is a character that, I like her quite a bit. It's just I don't see her splash potential quite as much. I think I'm hoping that she ends up being a Midnight Sun because that would be really good. Having access to sort of a 3-threat Mystic Beater is really nice. It's something that's been missing from the game for quite a while. And also her teleport ability is really good.
It's really nice, isn't it? It's only on herself, but it's really, really nice. And Sorcerer Supreme of Limbo as well. She's already got 4 defensive stats on her Mystic side. We're going to see, if you go to games, the new TTS League, you're going to see a lot of Mystic attacks because they're the new shiny things. And we see every year or every season, the new shiny things get more play than everything else because people want to play with new shiny things.
Yep.
So that 4 Mystic defense, plus then with Sorcerer Supreme of Limbo, is going to make her significantly tankier. But she gets that 4 Mystic, Quinn, without losing anything on her physical and energy. Because quite often we see a trade-off, don't we?
It's probably one of the biggest reasons that I put her above the likes of Clear specifically, and also to an extent Mordo. Like, effectively having the average stat line of a 3 threat, but better against Mystic, which is one of the better attack types in the game, and having access to Mystic attacks yourself is real nice.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. On to then our last one for consideration. 4 threats. Jericho Drum, aka Dr. Voodoo, your boy. Another one of your boys. Why does he work, or why does he potentially work in Guardians then, Quinn?
So I think, first of all, we kind of have to address the fact that Enchantress got nerfed, quite heavily. She's still really quite good. It's just that she's no longer the premier extract stealing 4 threat that she used to be. Whereas dear old Jericho sort of fills that gap, but in a way that is potentially less bullshit. He brings access to Mystic attacks. Range 3 Mystic Builder with stat power, really good. Gaining power for skulls, also really good. He's bringing you access to a throw. He's really tanky if you keep his brother on him. Immunity to Hex and Incinerate. Incinerate specifically makes him really good on demons.
Yes.
There are a lot of things that make Dr. Jericho Drum real good in every list, let alone Guardians, where he can have rerolls to murder people better.
Yeah. Well, as you say, he's got, the wild trigger. He's not fishing for many things, is he? But the stat power is really nice on Spirit Venom, and also that power burn is very nice on the staff of Legba. So yeah, I think he's definitely up for consideration. Another character, Quinn, that I want to throw in for consideration, and I'm jumping ahead with this one because normally we talk about dual affiliations towards the latter part of a video, but I want to throw him in here because I feel like, personally, he fits really, really well in this roster, and that is Big Daddy D, Dormammu. Now, obviously, we're going to do a video on the Dark Dimension and the absolute optimum characters, at least in our opinion, to take with Dormammu. But I think adding him in to a Guardians list, first of all, he's got some great characters around him. Dormammu wants, as we discovered, just supporting Dormammu isn't enough. Dormammu needs other characters around him that are going to be a threat. And I think, the likes of Rocket and Groot as a 5-threat combination, especially now with the new rules, really, really good. Nebula, really, really good. Ronan, potentially really, really good.
I mean, pretty much everyone of those 8 Guardians, bar maybe Star-Lord.
Maybe Star-Lord.
Is the gist I'm getting here.
Yeah, and I think that, because we've got the tactics card slot now up from 8 to 10, I think we take at least one of Dormammu's tactics cards with him if we take him in. But I think he brings something to the Guardians that really makes your opponent have to think about, shit, what direction am I going here? Because Guardians, maybe as they sit, they're not really one that you would dual affiliate with off the bat. I think there's very little crossover. I think the only one is Angela is in Asgard.
Angela is in Asgard and A-Force.
And A-Force as well. Is Gamora in A-Force? I don't think she is.
I don't think she is, because I think A-Force are weirdly biased against aliens.
They are, aren't they? So Nebula's not in there as well. So, they really are a solo affiliation. But I think a lot of the characters really work well with Dormammu, because they're all going to get one extra power a turn as well, which is really nice. You've got cards like, We Are Groot from Groot that are really nice as well. And I also want to throw in a secondary consideration if we go down the Dormammu route, and it's only if we went down the Dormammu route, and that is Sinister.
Yeah, Sinister being able to clone people, bring in like a rocket,
Bringing in a rocket or a Nebula, I think is really nice. So I want to throw that in there, and maybe we do something a little bit different at the end of this one, Quinn. Maybe we put a pure Guardians roster together, and then maybe we put a quick secondary. Yeah. Here's what it could look like with Dormammu, because I do quite like him in that scenario. Cool. So that is all the character cards down and out then, Quinn. So let's move on to tactics cards, and let's start, as we always like to do, with both character and affiliated tactics cards. So let's start with the affiliated ones, and Guardians are bringing 2. One of them I think is really nice. I really like Lovable Misfits. The other one is it's okay, but it's not the best.
I think with the 10 card limit, it probably warrants a place.
I think now with the 10 carder, it probably, Crew of the Milano probably does come in. But I think, it's not as good. I mean, it's better than, what's the Avengers equivalent one? I can never remember.
It's
Second Wind.
That is a heal 1, remove stun.
Yeah. This for me is a much better version of it. So spend 1, removes all, especially if you've got a character that's got a stagger on them. Yeah. I think then at that point it becomes really good, but not even just a stagger, but, a hex or a bleed or something like that. Then actually...
Yeah, I think also, there's a much higher prevalence of conditions like Incinerate in the game now compared to when this was released, and being able to pay power to just say no to Incinerate and not get it again for the entire round can be really, really good.
Yeah, maybe, and again, especially on a Demons or something like that, or Terrigen Cloud, where it's almost, if you want to score those VPs, it's pretty much guaranteed you're going to have to take that condition token. So actually, talking through it, Quinn, I like Crew of the Milano a lot better than what I did. So I think, for me, both of them go in there. Obviously, Lovable Misfits is a bit more RNG. You don't exactly know what you're going to get.
But when it pays off,
it's amazing. If you get a crit or a wild, they can all do an attack, and if they can't do an attack, they gain 2 power. Roll a hit. What is it? Hit, they suffer 1 damage. Roll a blank, you advance short. Yes, if you roll a failure, there is a bit of issue. Everyone around you gets the stun. But
people say this a lot about this card, that the skull is bad. But actually, the skull can be really good if you're stood in the middle of a bunch of enemies.
It can actually,
your entire team is stunned, and also I'm going to play Crew of the Milano and get rid of my stuns.
And get rid of all my stuns as well. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that goes in there. Turn. It's never going to be a turn 1 play, but turn 2 or 3 when you've got people in the mix. And, out of activation, anything is good, isn't it, Quinn?
That's if you roll right, it's effectively Siege of Darkness, which is really good.
And this channel is sponsored by Skillshare, and one Skillshare in particular, and that is Quinn Duggan's brand new project he's put together. It's How to Roll Better 101, where Quinn teaches you how to roll better. Because that's your advice for most people, Quinn, isn't it? Just roll what you need. Roll better. It's easy then.
Tell me any better advice for dice games other than roll better. There isn't any.
There we go. Roll credits. I want to talk about... So, Quinn, let's also then look at any affiliated characters and cards they bring. And there's not a lot for Guardians. There's only 3.
More than 2, though, right, Rich?
More than 2, yes, which was never said and edited out. Let's start then with Daughters of Thanos. So when either an allied Gamora or an allied Nebula makes an attack action, after the attack is resolved, both characters may spend 2 power to play this card. The character that did not make an attack may attack. So it's almost like a little mini husband and wife follow me, but you don't get the full activation. But it's really nice because if if there was one one health that you didn't quite manage to eke out, or one damage that you didn't quite manage to eke out on a target, then you can bring the other one into play and basically do it. And I think now that Gamora is good, she get good. This card is almost an auto include for me. I think, at least in the roster.
Getting a free Godslayer attack onto a character that's already been punched in the face by Nebula feels like a really good way to have a character not be on the table anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm right in thinking here, aren't I, that they can make any attack as well. So if they have the power for it, they can actually use their spenders. So you could use a Cosmic Assassin, or you could use the Shock Sword Assault that does stun from Nebula as well. So, and again, out of activation attacks, anything is really, really good.
Yep. I mean, yeah, Daughters of Thanos giving you out of activation attacks is really good for an attrition faction like Guardians are. One thing that tends to set apart attrition factions from sort of effectively sorts the wheat from the chaff is that access to out of activation attacks, or really premium quality attacks.
Yeah.
For instance, you've got your Midnight Suns with their Siege of Darkness being able to get out of activation attacks, finish off a model that might not have gotten there, or being able to activate another model, somewhere else on the field to deal with something, and then still be able to affect something on the other side of the board during that activation can be really good. Also, things like Black Order, they do really well in attrition because they have such a high quality of attacks.
Yeah, it's definitely quality over quantity for those guys, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because Corvus is bullshit.
For the moment.
For the moment, I'm still holding my breath on these changes. Just put Reality Gem in the bin and it'll be fine.
So, Quinn, talking about attacks and being able to do more attacks, yes, this one is during his activation, but it doesn't take up any of his actions, does it? Deadly Duo, being able to do 3 plasma rifle attacks. Yes, they've got to attack different characters, but it's really good, especially now with the rerolls and the fact that Groot can be the fact that Groot can be further away as well.
Yeah,
so you're more likely to take him.
Which is now the new limit of the personal bodyguard, which, that is the sweet spot for them now.
Yeah. So I think I really, really like this. It's such a good card. Yes, it needs to be on the right map. But, if you've got Rocket with a hammer and he's sat on that back point in Gamma Shelter or something like that, it's absolute field day for him. And as you say, especially because he can be sat behind a size anything building and shoot over the top of it, is very, very nice whilst being in cover. So I really like this, and I think 4 power to do three attacks is very, very nice. And then he still gets his two activations at the end of it. So it may be that you need to move him up medium to get in range of 3 people, but I think it's definitely worthwhile. And then the last one is We Are Groot. I really, really like this card. I believe I want to say it's the only non-restricted healing card in the game at the moment. I think.
Nope.
Go on.
Whims of Chaos.
Oh, Whims of Chaos. I always forget Whims of Chaos. Yeah. So Whims of Chaos obviously can heal one as well. Do you know why? It's because I rarely use it to heal one.
Yeah, usually
using it to
hex on a bunch of people and just kill them.
Well, you can put Hex out, but I'm also usually using it to remove condition tokens from my own characters. But yes, you are right. Whims of Chaos as well. There may be others, but 3 power to remove 2 damage from any number of characters within range 4 of him.
Yeah, that's big.
Especially now, and I'm going to harken back to it. Especially now that he can be so much further up the board than what he was previously. It doesn't sound like much, but going from a range 1 to a range 2 away from Rocket is massive. It's more than double.
3 times the distance.
3 times the distance, but we have to remember he's on a medium base, so it's even more as well. So it's super, super good. For me, because Groot is an auto-include in my roster, this is an auto-include in my roster as well for me.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're running like a white team, being able to heal a bunch of characters too is so much value. Also, with the fact that that is it, living plant, his heal ability. Is that what
Yes,
that's
yeah, he's
called?
got his own. He's got his own as well.
Yeah, with that going to once per turn now, also We Are Groot lends him that extra healing that he's now lost, but might be integral to him, not dying.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think the healing potential that he's got for himself is huge. Yes, it's been limited, but yeah, with that card as well, is very, very nice. And it's that survivability, isn't it? You've
Yeah.
used you might use a field dressing on somebody, and then you can use that card to actually, give them 3 health left, right? And if that's on an Angela, for example, doing 3 damage on Angela is not the easiest thing in the world to do, right?
No.
She's a tanky girl. So Quinn, on to some. Well, actually, let's go on to the restricted cards first of all. We always say this every single time. Restricted cards, once you've done what we've just done there, so character specific and affiliated cards, that is where you should be looking next. There's a reason they're restricted, and it's typically because they are the best cards in the game. I'm going to throw it up there. Field dressing, I think, has so much value in this list.
Yeah,
or in this
I
roster.
think quickly we should probably touch on the caveats that we use in the
Yes,
restricted section of this.
Yeah.
That we operate under the assumption that all you've got is banned and bitter rivals is restricted. Weirdly, still no update to the banned and restricted list.
Still no update. We thought they were, when we first did this video, we were like, it's only a week away. In
Yeah.
the next week they'll release this. So, but I mean, the nice thing with tactics cards is they're very interchangeable. Any of the restricted cards in any roster, maybe with the exception of Doom Prophecy, I would say, are all viable. Doom Prophecy is viable in a lot of lists, but only for specific characters. Like very much like Carnage. Yes, if anyone saw mine and Quinn's game the other week, Carnage popped off. Let's say. So I'm going to throw it in there, Quinn. Field dressing for me, so much value. I think it goes straight in there. I think for me it only leaves one spot left for the restricted.
I mean, like, you're an attrition team. If we are under the assumption that bitter rivals is restricted, bitter rivals feels like the one to go for.
Yeah, I really do like it. I think bitter rivals could be swapped out for a med pack, for example. If bitter rivals doesn't become restricted, then med pack is the one that I would probably go with. Maybe
if all you've got
doesn't get banned, I feel like that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, like all you've got in a Nebula could be fucking horrific.
So a bit of rivals, I think, yeah, absolutely. All you've got on Nebula, that's
yeah, boy.
God, yeah. I also really like Blind Obsession for the Guardians, and the reason why is we spoke, Quinn, before, haven't we? How this works really well in isolated instances, and you're going to have potentially characters that are quite isolated in this game. They're going to be wide if you're playing the right map, of course. So Drax could very easily be by himself. Angela could very easily find herself, outside of range 2 or 3 of other characters. Gamora's another one, Nebula's another one. So I think you've got a lot of characters here that could be on the flank, one against another character, and this card really comes into its own.
Yeah, Blind Obsession, absolutely brilliant card. Another one I saw that you pulled out there is Disarm. Disarm is really good.
Disarm is really good for the Guardians. Rolling fewer attacks or rolling fewer attack dice is very, very good.
I mean, effectively, a lot of the time it can just turn the character off for a round.
Yeah. Which if you're coming up against a big character, it's really nice. And again, if you're playing, if you are playing a Rocket and Groot, for example, and somebody's got into range of Rocket and Groot, there's a good chance that those 2 characters are going to be within range 3 of the same character. Gamora and Nebula, if you're playing Daughters of Thanos, they may be paired up on the board. So you've got these little pairings, haven't you, in the Guardians, where they're potentially going to be sticking together to play some of those tactics cards. So
Yeah.
Disarm gets even more value out of that because, let's take the Rocket and Groot example. Groot's going to take the hit, but then if that character is disarmed, then Groot's probably not going to take any damage or take minimum damage as well. So, really nice card. Obviously, there's some tactics cards that we would look at from the other characters that we bring in as well, but we won't go through those now. Quinn, any other unaffiliated tactics cards that you want to talk about?
I think advanced R&D is always worth a shout. Like, you can usually find a use for it turn one. Where, like, for example, getting Gamora to do an assassin's leap turn one, get her into position, maybe get an attack out. Like, there are a lot of situations where that card is good. I think Guardians are one of the factions where it's less good than others. It's not like in Midnight Suns where you get a free bump. But, like, there are definitely uses for it.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So lastly then, Quinn, is onto the type of setup that we want when it comes to the battlefield itself. So what crisis cards do we want to look at? Now, for anyone that is not aware of the new rules with crisis cards, there's some fairly big changes coming. And then we're going to base our rules here on those changes as we've done with everything else. So the first big change is that the cards are now selected completely at random. So we roll for priority as normal, but then we choose whether we want extract or secures if we win the priority. And then we take one of our 3 extract cards, for example, let's say, completely at random. It's no longer remove 1, pick from 2. It's completely at random. So we've got far less manipulation over which card we can take. The other really important fact here is that if we win priority, our opponent gets to choose the threat level. Now, I think Guardians, Quinn, because they're not they're not a Defenders or a Wakanda or any of these other, affiliations where it's a big turn 1 play that's going to set the rest of the game up and basically put your opponent on the back foot because there's nothing they can do about it. They don't really have that. So I actually think they don't really care about these changes. I think it benefits them more than anything.
I think you could say that one of the Guardians' greatest strengths is their ability to wing it. Like they can play anything.
Yeah, they really can. They really can. With that, however, I think we've got some flexibility in the squad that whether we're out wide or whether we're all down the middle clumped up on a gamma shelter, they can really handle any scenario that's thrown at them, can't they?
I think potentially the methodology for picking out crises with Guardians is just take the ones that will be most annoying for your opponents.
Yeah, because I think what they have is some real flexibility in the threat levels. They can burst up and down very, very easily. But I mean, for me, I like hammers, and I'll tell you why, Quinn. Because everyone likes a hammer.
Everyone likes a hammer, especially a rocket doing deadly duo.
Exactly. So you've got, rocket doing deadly duo. You've got, Star-Lords, right? Star-Lord's element gun, full auto. The more dice you roll, the more chance you've got of all these triggers.
I mean, it's almost like characters that make attacks are better when they have extra dice when they make attacks.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So one that we obviously talk a lot about is Wakandan herbs. We don't really have a plan for it, do we? And we always say we don't have a plan for it. We don't include it in the roster. And I think similarly, Deadly Legacy Virus Cured is a similar one as well.
I think Cubes is a really good one. Like Guardians have lower health pools, but if you've got We Are Groot, you can obviously heal up 2 turns worth of cube damage. More power is more good. Yeah. I really kind of like Research Station, honestly.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I know we don't normally go into the specifics of which, well, we normally do in the roster phase, but I think because the shape of the map is almost irrelevant for these guys, it then does come down to which crises are going to be more difficult to play around. And I think that you want, as you say, anything that gives you more damage, but as you say, anything that just annoys. We've got a lot of mobility. So the fact that it moves, that research station or the researcher may move is quite nice as well. Quinn, secures. I'm going to throw one out there, or a couple out there, are the ones that give out the special conditions.
Yeah.
Because I think they have a way of being able to deal with them. So I want to talk about demons, and I want to talk about Terrigen Cloud.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I want to talk about Terrigen Cloud is it gives out poison, which they can deal with. It also moves, and I think you can use that to your advantage with this list.
Poison's actually a really interesting one with the Guardians because 2 of them are immune to it as well.
Yeah. Nebula and who's the other one?
Ronan.
Oh, Ronan, of course. Yes, because he's a Kree. Yeah. So I really like that one. And then Incinerate. I think we've got character. Is there a character that's immune to Incinerate?
Voodoo potentially.
Voodoo, that was the one that I'd seen. Yes, yeah. But again, with that ability to remove that condition for a round, I think it's really, really nice.
Yeah. I also think the one you're hovering over could be real inclusion, just because everyone hates sword.
Everyone hates swords, and we've got a really nice 14 threats.
I think you can actually go 6 wide at 14 with Guardians, which is fucking abhorrent.
It really is. And 6 very good characters as well who are going to dish out some real good damage with all those rerolls and everything else. So I actually think, Quinn, I really like that. I'm just having a quick look through now. I mean, Gamma Wave is absolutely viable. You can definitely play into that with no problem. Infinity Formula again. No issue with that because they're spread out, but you're going to have lots of characters who can contest them. I also don't mind Riot. It's another form of healing those characters as well. But yeah, those 6 that we've picked out, I really do like. I think really lend themselves to not necessarily, as you say, the strengths of the Guardians, because the strength of the Guardians is they can play any affiliate, any extract, any crisis in any shape, but they're just really annoying for your opponent. And you know me, Quinn, I like to throw in some odd numbers. So the fact that we've got a 14, the fact that we've got a 16, the fact we've got a 20, it often forces people to think more about what they're taking.
No one plans for 20.
No, not at all. Not at all. Unless you run a Brotherhood list with Thanos,
with Time Reality,
Scarlet Witch, and Magneto.
Yeah, I remember.
I think I'm almost 100% win rate with that one, but that's for a different video. Coming soon, the Brotherhood one. So yeah, I'm fairly happy with that list there, Quinn. So just to recap then, guys, I think the one thing I'm going to say about Guardians is if you're coming into this game and you're not sure who to play, yes, starting with Steve's Avengers or Red Skull's Cabal is a solid starting point. I think you're going to have fun playing those. You're going to learn the mechanics of the game. But if you want I don't know, Quinn, a roster or an affiliation that is more fun to play than Guardians for me. They've got some, unique characters. They've got some unique abilities. They've got some really nice tactics cards. As you said, the floor for these guys is very, very high. You're really unlikely now, I think, to get an absolute spanking with these guys, right? You're probably going to be taking it to the 5th or 6th round, aren't you, in most games that you play? So you're going to have a fun game with it. Whilst if you are one of the higher up players, I'm not going to say a competitive player because you're probably not watching these videos, but what was the one down, Quinn, the middle one that Mark spoke about?
So you've got the law nerds, you've got the spiky ones, and then the brewers.
The brewers, yes. The brewers, which I would say that's where me and you fit, Quinn, in the brewers.
I mean, I have my favourites. I like them.
I think you're going to have so much fun with this list, but it's going to be competitive. I think you're going to be able to come up against most of other affiliations, and with a little bit of luck on the dice, with all those modifications now, you're going to have, it's going to be much, much easier to find that
You're
rip.
going to be able to give them a game.
Exactly. I think it's a great starting point for somebody who's, bought the core box, had a couple of games, and is looking for their first affiliation, because there's some really nice, shiny new stuff in there. And actually, they're one of the few affiliations where, a lot of the tactics cards you want, if you've got the core box, you just by buying the Guardians, you're going to be able to make a really, really nice roster with the core box, and then is it the four or five Guardians boxes that we've got?
4 with Angela, I think.
4 with Angela, yeah. And you know what? You could even not include Angela as well if you didn't want to. She's not essential for this list.
5 with Angela, because Star-Lord is a lonely boy.
Oh, Star-Lord is by himself, isn't he? Yeah. But I do like that, Quinn. I do like that you've got Star-Lord by himself, and then it is Rocket and Groot, both Guardians. Drax and Ronan, both Guardians. Nebula and Gamora, both Guardians. I really do like that. I think it's really, really nice. So I can highly recommend them as an affiliation. They are probably going to be my affiliation that I go for moving forward. Just because they're so much fun. They are so much fun.
They also have a lot of access to energy attacks, and energy attacks in terms of dice are the least defended attack type in the game. Obviously, there's defensive attack that works against it, but it makes Blade really sad, and I don't like that.
Well, it makes Blade really sad. It makes Venom really sad.
It makes 4 or 5 attacks make Venom sad.
Well, yeah, any of those. Carnage it's going to take out. You come up against an Enchantress, we spoke about how she's not as good as she was, but she's still very good. An Enchantress or a Mysterio where you've got to pay power to do the attack. They're not lacking for power either. So I really like them. There's even a shout to say that you could even potentially include an Iron Man with Helios laser bombardment in this list as well, Quinn, as another 3 threat. But I think you could probably say that for most lists now. That Iron Man could fit into them. So guys, as we always do, me and Quinn are going to go away now. It will be mere seconds for you guys, but it'll probably be 40 minutes of me and Quinn arguing over who goes in and who doesn't.
Oh no, we're always lovely to each other behind the scenes.
So guys, before we go into our roster building, I want to just quickly talk to you about an event I'm running at the end of this month, and in fact the end of this week, probably tomorrow by the time this video comes out, Thursday, Friday, the 28th, 29th of October. I'm running a huge 27-hour streamathon where I'm playing 18 games back-to-back of Marvel Crisis Protocol. I'm mad, stupid, or somewhere in the middle. I suppose being mad and stupid are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, no, you definitely both have to quite well.
But why are we doing this? Well, it is all in aid of a charity really close to my heart called Candlelighters Charity. They're a children's cancer charity based in West Yorkshire in the UK. They help both the children, but more importantly, and people that sometimes go a little bit forgotten, the family of those children during a trial when they're going through their surgery and everything else that they're having. And they help them out financially. They help them out with respite. They've got holiday homes that they own that they can let people use free of charge. It's an absolutely fantastic charity. And I want to say a big shout out now to the 5 sponsors that we've got of the event. So that is Leodis Games.
Can you list them all?
I can list them all, yes. That is Leodis Games, that is Union County Gaming, that is Blackgate Games, that is Cogger 2, and that is Elysium War Games. And you can probably see behind me, we've got some fantastic giveaways. First of all, we've got the Initiation League Organised Play Kit. Now, I've never seen one of these in person before. The only time I've ever seen these cards is playing on TTS. But they are absolutely beautiful. So we've got 8 of these to give away. There's 8 card sets in here. 1 Red Skull, 1 Captain America. And I don't care if the Captain America one isn't the right one anymore, Quinn. It's still an awesome card, isn't it? It looks so good. So we'll be giving away these throughout the night. We've also got some tokens, some range sets from the guys at Kogoto. We've got some vouchers, some store vouchers for the Odis games. We've got a Hulkbuster, Quinn. Now, I think I want to say that we're the only country in the world at the moment that has Hulkbusters in hand.
Mainland Europe has it as well, but who cares
If you're in,
right.
if you're in Australia, I don't even know if you've had the Guardians yet. This might all be new shiny stuff that we're talking about with you today. But I know in the US and everywhere else they don't have Hulkbuster at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, no one's going to win that Hulkbuster because it's
Quinn. I've got two. I've got two Hulkbusters. One that I'm painting, one that I'm giving away. So huge shout out to the guys at Elysium for this one. They're a main sponsor of the channel as well. To Ellis and the rest of the guys there. Huge thank you to that one. And then Quinn, I think the one that a lot of people are going to be going in for
is it the big boy?
Is Big Daddy D Dormammu. And I just want to say a massive shout out to the guys at Union County for this one. When I reached out to people asking if they could give if they could give something for me to give away as part of it. My plan originally was to just allow everyone to enter this free of charge if they turned up and watched the video. But it got to the point, Quinn, where the prizes were so good, I felt like actually asking people to donate a minimum of £5 wasn't too much because they get 3 entries into it. And, a chance to win a Dormammu. I'll also ship these guys anywhere in the world as well. So if you are in the US, if you're in Australia, if you're in Uzbekistan or wherever else, doesn't matter. I'll ship these. But we've got some fantastic prizes. So thank you to all of those sponsors. It does make it much more interesting. So how can you win those? Well, there'll be a link in the description below for my Just Giving page. Go there and donate a minimum of £5. £5 will get you 3 entries. There's 5, 10, 25, £50. I mean, somebody donated $100 last night, Quinn. I could not believe it. It's absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. Honestly, the support so far from this community for this charity has been phenomenal, and I just can't thank you all enough. So thank you to every single person who's donated so far. But if you want to be in with a chance of winning it, make sure you head over to the Just Giving page. Right, now me and Quinn are going to go away. We're going to build some rosters, and then we're going to come back and show you them. And I think as a change, we're going to put 2 rosters together, one with Dormammu, one without Dormammu. So bear with us for a couple of seconds for you guys, and we'll be right back.
A few moments later.
Cool. Okay, guys. Well, that is me and Quinn done. Actually, not too many disagreements there, Quinn, was there? It was fairly easy to put them together.
That shit Dormammu character. But,
So, guys, as I mentioned, we're doing something a little bit different with this one. We've put together 2 different rosters. One if you just want a pure Guardians, and then one if you want to do the dual affiliation with Dormammu, as we discussed. Because I think this second roster we put together is potentially going to become my new roster moving forward. But, Quinn, let's start with the sort of Guardians by themselves, first of all. So, I can't believe I'm saying this. We've taken all 8 Guardians in our list.
yeah.
Which I don't know if there's going to be any other affiliation we'll do this. Because unless Ebony Moore and Black Dwarf get massive buffs, I think so far we haven't, have we? Maybe with Avengers we took all Avengers, Cabal we took all Cabal, but they're so big in terms of the number of characters. But yeah, all 8 characters, and they're so interchangeable as well. There's so many different ways that we can play this. I think for me, Quinn, I'm looking at a core here of 3 characters, which is going to be only 8 threat, which is crazy. But Star-Lord, Rocket, and Groot.
I think that's pretty much the lowest threat core you can make in the game. Obviously, you can do 7 with Nebula, but that's a really well functioning core for 8 threat. That gives the old Wakanda triad a run for its money.
It really does. Yeah.
Being able to chuck in Gamora and Nebula for a 14 threat game, fucking mental.
I mean, that is what we are
That,
playing.
like, terrifying.
Research station. Sorry, not research station. Sword on, isn't it? Basically.
Yeah, I mean, either that or Gamora becomes Voodoo potentially, but like, yeah,
Gamora can become Voodoo, or even I don't mind Baron
two
Zemo
yeah.
and Drax as well coming in there. So yeah, so many possibilities. But I think for me,
Like, I mean,
that core is Star-Lord, Rocket, and Groot, and
yeah,
making it
just
into
thinking about
99%.
that, thinking about a 14 again. Like, you do that, then you put in like Misfits, Daughters of Thanos, Deadly Duo. You have like 3 ways to access multiple attacks that you wouldn't otherwise get. You can just like clear people off of Sword.
It's crazy.
Like, you took your bitter rivals on top of that, and like maybe a field dressing if things get hairy. Like, that is spooky.
Yep. Yeah. Blind Obsession or as well. Yeah. All of a sudden, it starts getting very, very killy for not much threat at all. So let's talk about some specific ones. And we just spoke about Sword. I think these two are interchangeable. I really think it depends on who you're coming up against. I actually think if you're coming up against a heavy mystic, you stick with Gamora, because she will shred Convocation, whereas Doctor Voodoo is limited to just the mystic attacks. I also, as I said, don't mind going with the 2-3 threats. But let's have a look what else we've got on here then, Quinn. So research station. So a 16 threat one, which is one that often catches people out, doesn't it? I think 16 threat. I think again we've got a couple of different options here, haven't we? Depending on who we come up against. But who would you put your money on for a 16 threat list?
I feel like Nebula, like being put in there to make it a 10, and then just like going Drax Zemo seems really good. Like, that's super killy yet again. Or like you drop out Zemo, Drax, and Nebula, and then take like maybe Gamora and Ronan, or Gamora and Voodoo, or like Angela and a 3 threat. Like, there are so many options to build your list with like this roster.
Yeah, and I think having there's 2 things I like about this list. Having so many affiliated characters gives a huge amount of value for livable misfits. One power to do all of those things is absolutely amazing. It also gives more value to Crew of the Milano as well. That becomes really, really good. But yeah, just the flexibility they've got, and as we say, we can go super, super wide here. I mean, on a Terrigen Cloud, for example, at 20 threat.
Yeah,
I think,
you chuck in like Nebula, Gamora, and then like the 2-3 threats. You're at 7 characters. You've got all of the attacks in the world.
It's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Have we got ones with a central objective? I'm just having a quick look here. I can't remember. Yes, of course. Cube. So maybe at 17 threat, Quinn, that's where we do bring Angela in.
Yeah, you bring Angela in and hammers and like threaten with that. Potentially bring in Voodoo as well.
Yeah, I like Voodoo. I also like Ronan.
17 is really nice.
Yeah. So I think, again, guys, as you probably got from this, the flexibility we've got. We're not worried about what we come up against. We're going to be able to handle it. We can go we can go if we need to. We can go, super short, right? If we really needed to, we can have a 16 threat of Hela, Voodoo, Ronan, and Star-Lord. And I look at it and go,
how Hela made it into this list? What
did I say? Hela? Who did I say?
Yeah, you did.
Angela? Is that what I meant? We'll keep that one in.
Do all that Guardians look alike to you, Rich?
Yeah. We can go with Angela, Voodoo, Ronan, and Star-Lord at 16 threat, and I'm like, yeah, I don't mind that. Like, I have no issues with that whatsoever. Depending on what we come up against, so I love this. Absolutely love this roster. As I say, this could very, very quickly become my favorite affiliation to play with. They could displace Brotherhood for me. They've got some really good characters. They're really fun to play, but also they've got some really nice models as well, Quinn. They've got some, and I've mostly painted them up, which does make it a lot easier.
I've been like looking at the ones that I haven't gotten done, and by the ones I mean Angela and Ronan. Like Ronan's really quite close to completion. Like a lot, as with a lot of my collection, they're all like 80% done, but I'm not fucking happy with them.
So, guys, let's then go into what I think is also a very, very viable list. And we've never done this before. We've never done dual affiliation, but I do feel like Guardians, Quinn, lend themselves so well to pivoting into a Dark Dimension list. So everything has, the core of the team has remained the same, right? All of the Guardians are present. What we've done is we've swapped out Brother Voodoo and who was the other one? Zemo. Swapped out Brother Voodoo and Zemo. I just forget him because he's the least best dancer between him and Star-Lord. Remember, guys, comment section down below.
You put some respect on that name right now.
Who would win a dance-off? And we've replaced them with Dormammu and Mr. Sinister. So I think in this scenario, Star-Lord is the one that we're not really going to be focusing on too much for any of the Dark Dimension lists. I think when we come up against lower threats, I think anything 16 and below, Quinn, we're really looking at the Guardians for those lists, aren't we? We don't really want to play Dormammu anything below sort of 16, 17 threat. And we've gone through those ones. So let's look at then what it would look like. And for me, the core here is going to be these two guys with then one of our 3 threat characters, which in this case is only going to be Drax or Groot for to take us up to 15. And then we've got some options then as to what we can bring in if it's a higher threat. But the reason I want to include a 3 threat character is because of the Dark Restoration. So I really like that. I think there's an argument to say that this at 17 is what it looks like.
19 on demons, you bring in Nebula, and then hopefully by the end of round 2, you're bringing in like a Drax for free with the cloning banks.
Yeah, absolutely. Or at 20, you kind of maybe do it the other way around, don't you? You maybe bring in, a Drax as well, and then you round 2 bring in a Nebula. So all of a sudden, guys, we're going very, very wide in a Dormammu list, which is not a bad thing. And as we spoke about, Quinn, Dormammu doesn't want supporting characters. He's okay with one of them. And I think we get that in Groot to some extent with the heal. But what he wants is lots of other people around him who are not as big a threat as him, but can deal some damage. And we've got some really, really nice damage dealers on this list. So we kept everything else pretty much the same. We kept all of the crisis cards the same. We did swap some of the tactics cards out, obviously. All of the Guardians and all of the character-specific cards remained. Field dressing and bitter rivals remained, but we put in cloning banks. We put in the Dark Restoration. We chose not to put the other card in for Dark Dimension. It's not as good. And then the one card we put in that I would say, Quinn, is out of this list, the one tactics card people could remove if they wanted, and that is Forced Extraction. I don't think that is 100% necessary. But with having Groot in there for the healing, with having Nebula in there potentially as well, because she's going to heal herself, so she almost she pretty much negates that the damage that she takes from there. I don't mind that, but if you wanted to swap it out for something else like a disarm or a blind obsession or something like that, feel free, go ahead. Maybe even advanced R&D would work with this list as well. But there we go. That is our Guardians and Dark Dimension list, and I've got to say, guys, this could be my roster moving forward. Now, obviously, we've used the old character cards here, but it would be using all of the new character cards. They're just not available in TTS at the moment, but you'll have seen what those cards look like earlier on in the game. Quinn, anything else to add on this, or indeed the roster that we did beforehand?
Nothing other than to say that Zemo is the best answer. Go vote for him.
We'll have a vote down in there. We may even put it up on the community and get that going right now and see who wins that. But so, guys, that has been us. Hopefully, you've enjoyed this one. I know me and Quinn were dreading doing this one at first because what on earth were we going to talk about for an hour or so? I think this video might even be even longer than the normal ones for the Guardians, but they are a super faction, highly recommended. I think they're a great entry level faction as well, Quinn. I think, potentially high ceiling, not as high as some others, but it's that high floor, I think, makes these a very not a very easy affiliation to play. You still need to know what you're doing, but you can make a couple of mistakes and it's not going to ruin your game. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Quinn, do you want to say goodbye to the people?
I'll say it after you do because that is the customary way of doing things.
That is the customary way of doing things. Guys, remember we've got our event happening at the end of this week. Please head down to that Just Giving page if you can. £5 will get you entry into our prize draw. And it leaves me just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, bye for now.
See you.